extraordinary Ollie. They are extraordinary Ollie volunteer leaders. They are members of the Performing Arts Initiative and do many things with Ollie around the performing arts. And we're so delighted that they have curated and are moderating this Berkshire Theater Conversations class during these unusual times. So please join me in welcoming Nancy and Naomi.
Are you am I going to go first, Naomi? We have
Oh, yes. Yes, please.
Okay. Well, it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Peter Bergman, also known as J. Peter Bergman. Now, I know we've all heard of the Tonys, the Clio Award, the Emmys, the Grammys. Well, I have one for you today. Actually, Peter has one for us today called the IPPY. And that is the Independent Publisher Award, which he received for his novel called Cement Dusk. Now, you see that blue ribbon around his neck, and attached to it is a gigantic silver medallion.
Yes,
I tell you, Peter, it outdoes the Olympics. You've gone for silver. I've heard of gold and bronze. You've gone for silver and you've gotten it. So that's great. And the name of the book is Cement Dust. So we'll be able to get that book now. It's out now.
Yes, you can order it on Amazon.
Thank you for helping me out with that. Everybody, we all know Peter. We've had the pleasure of him being with us on our Fridays at Ollie. I'm calling it Fridays at Ollie. Now we're in our, I think, third or fourth year of this course for Ollie. And now we're going to have Peter and Julianne Boyd have a discussion after a few moments of introductions. Anyway, we'll say that Peter has been in the business since he was born. He was born in the business, doing all kinds of commercials when he was a baby for the beech nut people who made baby food. He did that for quite a while, but we know him more now as the executive director of the Edna St. Vincent Millay Society at Steepletop in Austerlitz, which is a wonderful place. If none of you have seen that, it's a great place to go for a visit when we can visit again. So he spent quite a bit of time there, and he compiled Millay's poetry in a dramatic format called I'll Kiss You If It's Tuesday. That was produced at the Ghent Playhouse in 2008. So Peter's had a long career in the arts, from having appearances in West Side Story, Wait Until Dark, and The President's Analyst for a few of the films he's been in. He also is a familiar face at Arrowhead, the Herman Melville home in Pittsfield, and has done public relations consulting in public arts and performing arts. He also created the Berkshire Concert Series, which is a talent agency and producing organization. Of course, we all know him as a theater critic for the Edge and for Berkshire Bright Focus. He's written locally for the Advocate, the Chatham Courier, the Independent, the Eagle, most of the publications in and around our area. Perhaps you don't know that he's also a playwright. This is a man of many talents. His most recent play, Dream Awake, was done at the Whitney Center, and his poetry also has been published. And he got a Friends of Charles Dickens Award for his book of short fiction, Counterpoints. He lectures and speaks on theater and local history in the colleges around the area. And I think we have got a very good picture of you, Peter. We can't wait to hear what you have to say about our COVID area and the theater.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Julianne Boyd. I know there's the cliche, someone who doesn't need an introduction, but it really applies here. But for those who may not know that Julie was the founder of Barrington Stage in 1995. And there are two things about her on this the Barrington Stage that I particularly like to point out. I think she's been so ambitious and courageous. We've always looked forward to every season because she has always brought in something new and revolutionary and provocative, but also has taken ambitious in taking something like West Side Story or Fiddler on the Roof, and where some of us would say that's very ambitious because we all saw it on Broadway, and she brings something special to it. So we've been privileged to have her in the Berkshires. We've been Pittsfield is absolutely, probably every real estate broker in Pittsfield is thrilled to be able to point to Julie as a kind of jewel of Pittsfield and what she's brought there. On a personal note, the first time I saw something at Barrington Stage, it was in Sheffield. And we just come up for the first time and we saw Les Liaisons Dangereuses. And I said, who is this crazy person who would be doing something, a Lacroix book in Sheffield? And it was brilliantly done on a high school stage. And I was in awe then, and I've been in awe ever since. And thank you very much, Julie, for everything that you brought to us.
Thanks, Naomi. Thank
So
you.
Peter and Julie, Peter will be kind of interviewing Julie, but also having a conversation about Julie's life, the theater, the virus, and the plans for the future. And also, I'd like to thank you every time we've called to ask you to do an Ollie course or something, you immediately, like within 24 hours, you respond and say yes, and I love Ollie, and we love you, so thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Nancy. It's a pleasure to be here. Okay, Peter, what do you want to ask?
I want to ask you a lot of things, and I want to take you back in time for just a bit. I had a conversation on Sunday at the grocery store with a woman who asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, for one thing, I'm doing this Ollie course, and I'm going to be interviewing Julianne Boyd on Friday. And she said, oh, it's so nice for you from away, because I am from New York originally, to interview one of our native sons, Julie Boyd. And I thought, people don't know who you are and were in the history of the theater. And I think it's important to give people a sense, really, of your background. It's so important. I mean, I remember My Name is Alice and UB going back to, what, 1978 in New York. So just give us a little fill-in on who you have been.
Oh my God. Okay, so just a thumbnail. Okay, so I'm actually from Pennsylvania. I was born in Easton, Pennsylvania. I come from a large Italian-American family. My father was a Sicilian background. My mother's Napoletan. They were born here, but their parents were immigrants. Actually, my father went back to Italy when he was young. He was born at the time of the influenza, and his parents took him back to Sicily. So by the time he came back and went to school, he didn't speak any English. He only spoke Italian. So that was very ingrained in us, although they would never teach us any Italian. I have 4 brothers and sisters. And I've always been interested in theater, and I can't really tell you why. I think it's because I was a good reader, and they always asked me to read things aloud in my little country farm school, and I loved performing, and I loved just, being in front of people. But then by the time I got to college, we're going to skip, quickly here. I was doing a lot of acting, but I really wanted to direct, but there were no female directors. There were really no role models at all. And I wanted to direct. And then I went to graduate school. They kept on asking me to act. And finally, I was actually working on my doctorate on classical Japanese theater because I thought I would be a professor and then I would get to direct in college. And my college professor came over to my house. This was when I was in my probably mid to late 20s, probably mid 20s. And I already had one child. I must say in my late 20s because I think I had 2 kids by then. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a director. But I don't know any directors. I don't know any female directors. And I don't even know how you start. And she said, she was very dramatic. She was American, but she always talked with sort of a fake English accent a little bit. And she said, do you know how you become a director? I said, no. She said, you say, I am a director. And then you go out and you find a project that only you can do, a project perhaps that you own, or that the writer excuse me, wants you to do. And that was the best advice I was ever given. And I started working like off Broadway for no money. I mean, I didn't make a penny in theater until I directed a show on Broadway. I mean, I worked maybe 7, 8 years. And what I found out was that she was absolutely right. I had to find a project that I owned. And at the time, cabarets were just coming in. A lot of theaters are doing cabarets. So I found this archival recording of U.B. Blake's 1921 musical, the first Black musical on Broadway. It was called Shuffle Along. And I got the rights to it. And I then did it off Broadway. And it got great reviews. And we then, producers were really, really interested, and we took it to Broadway. So when I was 33 years old, I had a hit show on Broadway, and I had never made a penny in the theater before then. So I worked a lot. I worked a lot in New York theater, but then I really wanted to start working in regional theater. I felt that I wasn't really getting to know my audiences. It was very impersonal in New York. You would work in a theater and people would go by you when they left. If you were there doing previews, nobody would stop and talk. And I was asked to do a show at the Old Globe in San Diego. By this time I had 3 children, and I took the little one, the baby, with me, and the other 2 stayed with my husband in New York. And I loved it because people actually came up and talked to you. They were from the community. There was something about that community connection that made theater very alive to me. And I realized I was missing that component of getting to know the audience. And I worked in regional theater for many years. I'm still working in New York, but appreciating when I could work in regional theater. But by the time my little one was in 1st grade, I realized that I didn't want to be traveling anymore. So I really stayed in New York. Then someone told me that there was a job opening in the Berkshires. I had never been to the Berkshires. And they said, will you be interested in it? It's a summer theater. You only have to be there for 3 months. And you could take my daughter, who was then maybe 7 or 8, maybe 9 by that time. I think maybe 9. I could send her to camp in the Berkshires. What great place, right? So many camps here. So that's what I did. So I was at Berkshire Theater Festival for 2 years and really realized that what I wanted to do was I wanted to do, I think, theater that was a little bit more risky. And I wanted to do more year-round theater. Year-round at that point meant something other than from late June to Labor Day, just even in the fall season to start. Because there were so many fabulous people who lived here year-round, and they kept on coming up to me saying, like, why don't you do theater past Labor Day? Why aren't you doing something else? So in 1995, I found Barrington Stage, and I think you all know from there, we were down in Sheffield. As Naomi, you saw the game. I'm so thrilled. That was our musical version of Les Liaisons Dangereuses. It's one of my favorite things we've ever done. One of the most difficult things as well, because we were way over our head in building those fabulous 17th century costumes. We spent many a night, even I did sewing on those costumes. The whole staff did. It was amazing. So we were there for 11 years, and we knew that we needed to get out of the school because, again, our season was limited. Just the very reason I started the theater was to do things outside of the summer season. But at the school, you could only do things from late June to mid-August because they had to get ready for the school year. Even though we found little places to do things in the fall, like we did something at Berkshire Museum, we did something at the New Marlborough Meeting House in the fall, we were always creating theaters. We always had go to spaces and set them up. And wouldn't it be nice if we had our own theater? So as you all know, and maybe you don't, but in 2005, we bought the Berkshire Music Hall. People thought we were crazy. Literally, people would come up to me and say, you're out of your mind. Why are you going to Pittsfield? The theater is going to go down the drain. I remember going to dinner parties and people literally not physically attacking me, but verbally attacking me. And we really had done a study and realized we had a lot of people in the Pittsfield area from the sort of the Stockbridge, Lee, Lenox, Williamstown corridor. And I think, smartly made that move. It wasn't probably until the second year we were here, until we did West Side Story, that we're able to gain back the people from South County and start getting a much larger audience. So that's where we've been. We then were able to buy the VFW, which was a building with no architectural splendor whatsoever. In fact, I would say it's anti-architectural splendor. It's not a very attractive building, but it's great for us. We have Mr. Finn's Cabaret. We have a 136-seat theater. And we love going into spaces and making them theaters. And we also just love being in the Pittsfield community. It's very exciting being in a community where people care. Because in Sheffield, it was a little community, and there were a number of little communities around, but we never felt we were part of anything. But in Pittsfield, I think we feel we're part of Pittsfield, and we love the fact that arts are leading the economy here. I think that's really, really exciting. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's great. Thank you. It occurred to me, I looked up a review I wrote of one of the plays that you directed back in Sheffield. I think it was in your third season. It was Cabaret.
Oh my God, that was our first
Wonderful.
big hit.
It was a big hit, and it should have been. And I commented, I said about you and your work, her musical theater work needn't be confined to small cast shows any longer, as she proves with this excellent Cabaret. It then went on to win an award.
Yeah, it won some Boston Theater Critic Awards. It also transferred to the Hasty Pudding Theater. But, you know, that show almost didn't happen, which is sort of the rise, you know, the roller coaster ride of theater. We were doing that as a co-production with a theater in New Hampshire. I think it was called the American Theater Festival, long defunct. So what happened was there was another partner, the Foxborough Theater outside of Boston. We were in rehearsal when the American Theater Festival, and they were behind in their payments. We were each paying a third, and a third. And we were behind them. And he called, he said, "I'm sorry, we have to drop out. We're closing the theater." It was the beginning of a summer. And we had to raise additional funding. And it was really difficult. But what we did is, which is one of my favorite stories, is Becca Ayers, who played Sally Bowles. I said to her, "Would you come to a board meeting? Would you come to a board meeting and sing Cabaret and maybe this time?" And I asked Darren Carr, musical director. He said, yes. At that time, we were meeting in the library at Mount Everett High School. And so I said to our board, which couldn't have been more than 10 people at that time, "Would you come over to the chorus room? I want to introduce you to the woman who's playing Sally Bowles." And they said yes. And she was spectacular. And I said, "This show may not happen unless we can find the support to do it." And the board raised the money. And that's how that show got on. But it was really, really touch and go for those first several years. Every year we'd say, "We hope we make it to the next year. We hope we make it to the next year." But that was one of my favorite things that we've done, Cabaret. And it really showed us that we could do something, you know, bigger and more meaningful, even in a school setting.
It was terrific. And I'm glad to hear the story about how it got together and got on, because if it hadn't gotten on, things would have been really different for you.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
You're in Pittsfield now. I'm in Pittsfield. We love you in Pittsfield. And the theater has made a world of difference. It's brought a whole new, invigorated life to this community. And you need to know that, and I'm sure you do, but you need to hear it every once in a while. And so it's my joy to say it.
Thank you. I feel I'm excited by all the work that we're doing and what the community is doing. We're all, you know, all boats rise at the same time here.
Exactly. And that brings me to this season, which for many people is not happening. But you have found ways to make it work.
We planned, Peter, the season we were going to do or the season we're doing?
The season you're doing. The season you were going to do, I was really looking forward to.
Oh, such a shame.
This current version of a season, beginning in August and going into October, I'm looking forward to even more. Partially because you're pretty much it. There's not a whole lot else that's going on theatrically in the region. And for me, the region stretches from Schenectady, New York, out into the Pioneer Valley and down into northern Connecticut and up into central Vermont. And there's not much being offered anywhere. You're the highlight. Not that you wouldn't have been anyhow.
I was just going to say, I hope that's not the only reason, but I know what you mean.
But you really are giving us something. It's a very curious and interesting new season because of its limitations. You're doing one-person performances through most of it. Then you're bringing back the 10 by 10 show that you did back in February.
Right.
Which is what, 6 people?
Yes.
7 people?
6.
And then ending up with the price. I've loved and I've used your quote about the price, that it's a good play for you to do because it's about people who don't like each other and don't connect very much anyway.
Right.
Physically, they don't touch.
Right. I can keep them 6 feet apart pretty easily.
But with the 10 by 10, you've got the challenge of a lot of closeness.
No, really not. So we looked at it and we're going to do it on the main stage instead of the stage 2. So like that opening number, it's easier to keep 6 people 6 feet apart.
Sure.
I think what we will be doing is we will ask them to self-isolate themselves for 2 weeks ahead of time. I think that's one of the things that we think is important. But as far as there's only 2 pieces where they actually the opening number, and then the piece where she's on the, she wants to take a leap, you know, the piece, Jill takes a leap at the top of the second act, where she wants to take a bungee leap. And then the last piece, Oy vey Maria, and Matt Penn and I talked about them, and we can easily stage them without people touching. Most of the pieces this year, strangely enough, Peter, are people on one side of the stage and the other side of the stage. There is one number at the end of the first act, one scene at the end of the first act, where a couple, they're sitting down at a table, and it'll be a bigger table than we've used, you know. But I think if they've self-isolated, I think that they'll be okay to be that close. I think the bigger problem now, I think we know what we want to do for the season, is the only approval I'm waiting for is Equity, the actors union, and they have been reluctant to allow any of their 15,000 members to work, even under the safest conditions. And the directors union has allowed directors to work. As you know, the governor is allowing moderate sized theaters to open June 29th. The city of Pittsfield, we've met with the Board of Health. You know, everyone says, you know, basically COVID is under control here in the Berkshires, much more than it is on the eastern side of the state.
Right.
Having said that, we're taking the utmost precautions. I mean, our safety measures are, you know, they pass the doctors at Berkshire Medical Center. We're working with Zogics from Lennox, who do sanitations in hospitals, in gyms. You know, we're using electrostatic sprayers every night to clean the seats. We're changing the air. Our whole air ventilation system has changed. 100% of our air will be purged every night after a performance. And the next day, the air, instead of being like 10 or 20% fresh air and the rest recirculated air, it'll be 50-50 with MERV 13 filters. So we've done a lot. There'll be no touching. Everything is digital, 3 different entrances. And I don't know if you've seen photos yet, but we've already taken out the seats.
I have seen the photo.
Great. I think it's kind of neat looking, to tell you the truth.
It is. I love the depth of the aisles now. There's no way that nobody will have a knee against the back of a chair.
Well, that's why we had to take out the row. People said, why did you have to take out the rows? Just leave the row empty. I said, no, if you're in a row where we're using seats, you know, when there's like 2 people, then 2 empty seats, there are 2 empty seats between each party. If you have to walk by someone in the middle of the row, that empty row in front of you, it's a barrier, because you'd have to lean against it. So and the good thing about, there are 2 good things where we could do it in that theater. One is the seats were already 3 feet apart. There's more room between our rows probably than any theater that I know, really. And then the seats are only screwed into the floor, into the wood. They're not like bolted into cement. I mean, the reason they can't do anything in New York and Broadway, they're bolted into the floors. I mean, you can't take them out into cement. So having renovated this theater was a blessing. So we knew we couldn't do anything in Mr. Finn's Cabaret or Stage 2, too small. But this is a very airy. We have 520 seats. We probably could have put closer to 575 seats in that theater, but we purposely didn't, thinking of tall men. But people do not want to. Everyone said to me, like, "What? Do I have to have my knees on my chest again in your theater? Are your seats going to be that way?" And we really thought about the comfort of our audience members as we renovated the theater. And I think that it's paid off.
I think so. I think it's going to work very well. And you've got 14 performances of the 10 by 10 plays, and that's good. You've got 17 performances scheduled for the price, and fewer performances for your opening show. I think you have 11 performances of Harry Clark.
Right. Well, in the summer, what we're doing, we're not doing any 2-show days. So we didn't know when we scheduled it how long it would take to spray the seats after each performance. We actually thought it would take hours to dry. Well, it doesn't. It takes 10 minutes. It takes 10 minutes for us to it takes an hour or 2 to completely sanitize the theater, because we're also going over all the hard surfaces, banisters, and we're doing everything between performances. But we didn't realize that these sprayers are unbelievable. I saw a video of, I don't know if anyone has seen this. You can go online and find a video of Phantom of the Opera in South Korea. And they have not removed any seats. They have kept on going. They took a small break during the biggest part of the COVID over there, which was not as serious as it was here. And they had these sprayers, and that's where we saw them. We said, oh my God, can we get them here? And actually all the procedures that they're using, we're using. We've studied a lot. We've gone, I don't know if you've seen the Berliner Ensemble. They're doing exactly what we're doing. They're taking out every other row. There's space between the rows. Salzburg, music festival now, you might have read in the Times, they're going to be doing very, very similar to what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Peter, I'm a live theater person, and it's hard for me to do these Zoom, why don't you stream one of your videos of your shows? Well, Equity only allowed us to use one camera. Do you know what a one camera video is? A show that you're taking from the back of the house?
I actually do.
Yes. It doesn't show off the actors well or the play. And I don't think you can get the same feeling. It's different if it's National Theater and they have 3 cameras and they're editing it and it's like fantastic. And if we can I think Equity now supposedly will start letting us use 2 cameras, which will be a big improvement. So, but up till now, we've been a little limited by what the unions would allow us to do.
Right, they're technically for your own archive, for your own reference.
Yeah.
Not for broadcast or showing in a movie theater.
That's right.
Yeah, it does make a big difference. I was involved with the Theater on Film and Tape project at Lincoln Center when it first started. So I've been through all of that negotiation with the unions, particularly with Equity. And I admire anyone who takes it on. But it's a big effort.
It is. And, one of the things we're doing, we'll hear by next week. And if for some reason, we just don't know what their thinking is, to tell you the truth. Well, their thinking is safety, and I think that's important. But then again, the actors want to work. And, it just so happens the actor that we're using in Harry Clark has already had COVID. So it's like one actor on the stage who's 12 feet back on the stage, not close to the front row. There's no backstage crew. He wears one costume. There's basically no set. There are a lot of lighting effects, but we'll do other things. Our cabarets are almost sold out. Ann Hampton Callaway, oh my God, we announced the second performance. It's sold out within maybe one day, maybe less. Eleanor, which is again an Equity thing, but we added a performance that is doing really well. And so what we're finding is that some people really want to go to theater. If people don't want to go and they're not comfortable, they shouldn't. I mean, this is a really personal time and people have to do what they feel is right. But we have found that there are enough people to fill a 163 seat theater that they want to go out in a safe and secure environment. And that's what we're trying to provide. And I didn't think that I was an outlier. I just did what I normally do. Like, here's the challenge, like being in the school or moving to Pittsfield. How do we solve the problem? But I must say, I've learned more scientific information. I'm so unscientific. I know more about electrostatic sprayers now, air conditioning, air ventilation, ionizers, ozone, treatments. I mean, you have to learn. I mean, this business is making us spread out and learn a lot for the safety of our audiences and for the actors too.
You're going to have a second career as a consultant.
Well, I more theaters are calling me and I'm just going like, we just did what came natural. What came naturally. I mean, you just do, you think of like, so what we did is we said, okay, we're going to walk in the theater. Let's take it from a patron's point of view, perspective. Okay, our lobby's too small. They all can't enter from that lobby. Okay, we're going to open 2 other entrances. Okay, nope, we don't want to take the ticket. We don't want them to give us a ticket. Okay, it'll be on a clipboard. We'll have their name down. They'll have the program on their phone or it'll be up on the screen when they enter. As soon as they walk in, they must use sanitizer. I mean, we just thought about what we would feel comfortable with, and we went to our staff and some of them are very comfortable all the time and some are not so comfortable. So we just talked to everyone to try to get as much information and concerns as we could.
Well, that's great. So you're not going to have any physical programs to hand out?
None. It'll always be online. You see it on your phone. And when you walk in, instead of having a program, we'll have a big screen with our ads that would have been in the program will be up on the screen and the information. Now the program's very small because there's one person in each one of these shows. Right. It's not like we can do that all on one screen. And with Ann Hampton Callaway and each of the cabaret artists, they only have a pianist. So there's just 2 people on the stage.
Terrific. What's happening with your South Pacific?
Well, so South Pacific, as you know, we'll do next year instead. but we wanted to do something because I thought people really needed to have some joy in their lives. I think we're talking about a little hope and joy. So we decided that we wanted to do it outside. We don't want to do a musical inside right now because there's a lot of information out there about, you know, the danger of singing. And of course, those were choirs that were close together, but still the space of, you know, where does the spray when a singer sings, where does that hit? How far does it go? So we decided to do it outside. So we put a petition in to Wacona Park to see if we can do it there. Again, everything's pending, but it looks good. And the Pittsfield Suns would love us to be there. And we would do it, each actor would have their own mic. They would be 6 feet apart. We're not doing any woodwinds because of the expulsion of air. So we're doing it with 2 keyboards, a violin, a viola, and a cello.
Interesting.
I think will be very, now this is all based on whether equity lets us do it. But if they don't, see, we can do cabarets ourselves. They don't fall under equity contracts. So if we can't do South Pacific, we're going to do a Rogers and Hammerstein cabaret outside. It'll be Mr. Finn's cabaret outside. I think that outside is a little easier. Still doing social distancing, the seating, masks have to be in both, anywhere. I mean, masks are going to be a way of life for a long time. It's going to be difficult this summer because, you know, it's hot, but we're going to have our masks. Maybe that will be pleasant to go into our theater that'll be air conditioned and you know, have a little relief, but the mask will have to remain on. Also, we're not doing any intermissions. That was an important thing. But I realized that really soon, like, bathroom lines, that theater, it's so crazy. Of course, when you have 520 people, it's crazy. So Harry Clark, the show that Mark Dold is doing, which is a brilliant play, I think it runs 80 minutes, and all of the cabarets, their limit is 75 minutes. Great. So if you have to go ahead of time, there'll be someone keeping people apart and distance in our lobby, but we're hoping that people, most of the people will not have to use the facilities. There'll be no concessions, there'll be no gift shop, nothing where people can touch. You know, they can come into the theater and not touch a thing.
It's interesting that there's no concessions and no gift shop. A fair amount of income for any theater comes through those two aspects. So are you adjusting prices to try to compensate for that?
No, we actually reduced the prices because we felt that this was where we're not able to do, you know, big physical productions. Not that we would for our cabarets anyhow. So what we did is we lowered our top price by, I think, $10 or $13. Each price has been lowered. It's now $65 instead of $75 or $78. You know, in the middle price now is $49 instead of $65, and we kept the lower price at $35. We're not making money on this, and we normally take in $2 million in our box office. And you know what we're going to, it will break even on this little thing will be $200,000. So in order for us to get to next year, because we won't have that money, and also people were lovely enough and gracious enough, most people moved their subscriptions from this year to next year, which I loved. And so it helped our cash flow, but we won't be making that money on those subscriptions next year.
Yeah.
So we will be in a very difficult position. We're now starting actually at our virtual gala on June 27th. We'll be starting a $1 million campaign to get to 2021. Who knows what 2021 is going to be, but we know we're going to keep our doors open. We'll need to do that.
Yeah, you're basically looking at a 2-year payback.
Yeah.
To keep going.
That's exactly right. And also we are like, we got the PPP, you know, for 8 weeks. We do have to, we're starting furloughs. I mean, we can't keep it going. We're doing this minimal season. So we wanted to have some of our staff, you know, because the unemployment, you get an extra $600 until July 31st. And we thought that would be, that's better to, if we can, and since we're not really starting until August, we could let some of our staff take their furlough at that time, because that would help them. But we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We don't know what's going to happen, you know, in the winter. They're long months with no money coming in.
That's true.
So we want to do the same season we're doing now, and we're trying to raise the money. Hopefully the government, you know, will be more gracious. Hopefully donors will be more gracious. I know that Representative Barrett and Pignatelli are putting a cultural facilities bill, you know, but it's $75 million for every single cultural in Massachusetts. So it is better than nothing. Everything helps, to tell you the truth. But it's nerve-wracking. I think our board is really fabulous. I think our board is really, they were willing to, one of the reasons I wanted to do the season, Peter, and this, I should have said this first, is, you know, if arts are going to lead the economy in Pittsfield, the economy is going to be dead with no arts here. And I don't want to see those restaurants and stores close. Do you know how hard it's going to be to ramp up Pittsfield again from nothing? It's just too impossible. So I thought, if we can just do a little something, if we can do something and just help and all work together, I think that we have been more collaborative, not only in Pittsfield, but Berkshire County, than ever before. We're all in the same boat, and there's something about that where we're learning from each other and we're collaborating, and it's exciting in its own way, albeit nerve-wracking.
Very much so. I don't know if you saw the commentary article that the Berkshire Theater Critics Association published in the Eagle almost 2 weeks ago about
what was
the
it
state
now?
of the theater and what it means to this region. We were concerned because all we were hearing about on TV news and in the news was the loss of sports and rock concerts and how it was affecting people. And I said to the board, I said, you know, sports and rock concerts factor into our lifestyle here, but not on a major basis. Here, it's classical music and theater and dance that drive the economy.
That's right.
And we are concerned with theater. So we wrote a commentary article. The Eagle published it. Berkshire Edge published it.
I saw
A number of strange things. For actors in particular, when they're not working in a show, their backup has generally been working as waiters or waitresses or working in offices on part-time basis, and those have been closed. They've had nowhere to go.
And even worse than that, working actors, with equity not allowing the actors to work, they're not getting health insurance. And equity is not getting the money in from the theaters who pay something for the health insurance, and the actors not getting health insurance. There's going to be a major, major problem in this country for 15,000 people, not 15,000. If you worked on Broadway, if you work X number of weeks, you get a year's worth of coverage. But it's the actors who work in regional theaters. You know, we're counting on those 20 weeks. Now, if equity makes an exception, they still don't have the money to pay. They could make an exception, but I mean, I know the Directors Union, we think that we'll be out $2 million this year because 60% of our money comes from Broadway, 40% in regional theaters. So the unions are hurting, but the longer equity doesn't allow their members to work, the more difficult it'll be both for the members and for the union.
No, it's a big problem all the way around. Now, since you brought up the Directors Union, the SSDC or SDC now, I guess, you were president of that board for 6 years?
Yeah, that's as many years as you can be president. Twice. That's all I need. I was on the board for 20 years. I was president from, I think, 1992 to 1998. I loved it. You know, Peter, when you're a director, you're the only person in a room when you're in rehearsal. The actors have each other. If it's more than a one-person show, you know, the actors have each other to talk to, where they have the stage manager who's a member of the union, and you're by yourself. And particularly when you're a young director, you don't know where to go if you have any problems. You don't know if this is a good theater to work at, that's a good theater to work at, what to ask for in a contract if you don't have an agent. And I found it, as a young director, I learned a lot from the older directors, just listening to what they would be asking for, what to look for when they worked out of town, and really just helping directors get more rights. As I became a more experienced director, I loved helping younger directors because I knew that it's passing it on. I really loved it. I just think that it's a way to give back in this business. And I learned a lot. Sometimes I think I should have been a lawyer because I love the legal part of it. You know, I negotiated contracts with Broadway and off Broadway. We had an attorney, but we had our members, you know, who had to understand the contract. And it's great because you're not thinking about your own production. You're thinking about a world bigger than your own. You're thinking about helping other directors in this business. And it's rewarding. It just feels good.
That's great. I know one of the productions you were scheduling for this year was Ain't Misbehavin', and I assume you've moved that to next season.
Yeah, we've moved our whole season next season. Ain't Misbehaving is going to be spectacular. It is being directed and choreographed by Camille A. Brown. who is an unbelievably talented young, meaning in her 30s, late 30s, choreographer. She's appeared at Jacob's Pillow in the past. She was a Tony nominated for a show she did on Broadway, and she's reconceiving it. She got permission from Richard Maltby to reconceive it. It's usually done with 5 singers. It's got 5 singers and 5 dancers.
Oh.
And it's a co-production with Westport Playhouse. They're going to start it there. And I just thought reconceiving that show, and we've done a lot of shows, never enough, but we've done a lot of shows that have had Black themes, and there have been serious shows. And I think after American Version 2.1, the sad demise and eventual extinction of the American Negro, which I'm so very proud of and caused a lot of great discussions, I thought I wanted to do something joyful with our Black audience and our white audience. But I just wanted to do something that shows the joy and to remind people of Fats Waller and the jazz and Harlem. I mean, it was just such an exciting time in this country. So that's a really great pleasure. And I'm hoping it all comes together next year as well.
I hope so. But it brings up another thought. Have you ever considered reviving Eubie at your theater?
Everyone always asks me that, Peter. Do you know, I saw it online.
That's a good show.
I know, but Peter, it's so weird. Somebody just within the last couple months said to me, do you know you can see Eubie online? If you go to YouTube and you put Eubie in, or maybe Eubie Broadway show, it was recorded on Showtime when there was Showtime. And that Showtime video was been released in 2 parts on YouTube. You see Maurice and Gregory Hines, the tap dancing. It's so fabulous. I watched half of it. It was sad because so many of those performers, it was during the AIDS epidemic. Just at the beginning, and so many of them passed away. And Gregory Hines died of cancer a few years ago. And it was so sad because it was such a joyful time, even in the midst of a lot of craziness at the end of the 70s, you know. I don't think I can go back there because it was so meaningful. It was so special that it's hard to, I wouldn't be reliving that memory, but I would be trying to redo it to see it in a different way. And I'm not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to do that. But that's the question I get asked more than anything. Why don't you do Eubie again?
Interesting.
Yeah.
You did do A My Name is Alice up here, as I recall, didn't you?
Now, I could do A My Name is Alice many times. That's a little easier. We did A My Name Will Always Be Alice. So what I did is I did A My Name is Alice, conceived it and directed it with Joan McLean Silver. A My Name is Alice, and then A My Name is Still Alice. Okay,
Right.
They were done. The difference, I think one was done in 83, 84, the other was done in 92. I combined the best of those 2 and came up with A My Name Will Always Be Alice. Sad to say, that show is still relevant. And that was about women's rights and what women thought of and the progress that we've made. And some of the songs and skits are not relevant, but many of them still are. It's still being done around the country.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts that you have for the broader future? What are you looking forward to?
I think theater is going to go through a tremendous change in the next, obviously it's stopped now around the country, but I think the next 2 years we'll see radical changes. It can't continue the way it's been done. Will it ever go back to its former glory? Yeah, but with changes. I mean, theater has been going on, since on the sides of the banks of, in Egypt, the river with Osiris, it's been going on through then Greek times and so forth. I think as long as people have stories to tell, they want to connect through some sort of shared humanity. They want to be in a room with other people, which is another reason that I wanted to do a season this year, because I think we've been self-isolated for so long that to be able to get out and to have a shared experience, albeit at least 6 feet apart, Yeah. I think it's important. I think there are going to be changes. Things like, we changed all in our bathrooms, little silly things like touchless sinks, touchless toilets, touchless soap dispensers. When you go somewhere in the public now and you have to touch something, you're going to be nervous. I mean, you don't want to touch anything anymore. You're going to be carrying your little Lysol wipes with you or something, or sanitizer. I think that the Broadway's going to have a tough time. I don't know how they're going to do it. They're certainly not going to come back in September. If they come back in March, it would be a miracle, but more likely September 2021,
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to look at spaces that aren't theaters sometimes. There was an article written by a man named Davidson, I think Jeremy Davidson in Vulture. And he said, we have to think of alternate theater spaces, bigger spaces where people are more comfortable. And I don't know what that means, but I know that that's a great idea, particularly for now. And will we be more inventive? Our budgets are going to have to be smaller. We just can't keep on doing it. The budgets, what they were.
Right.
So, you know, will people be willing to pay $1,000 for a ticket in New York if they're not sure if they're going to catch something next to them? You know, yes, if there's a vaccine, of course, that would be great. But even when you have a vaccine, there's some people who won't take the vaccine. Do you ask the person, oh, excuse me, have you done the vaccine? Oh, you haven't? Well, I'm going to move. You know, I mean, the vaccine is, nothing is zero risk. Right. But how can we get minimum risk in this business? So I think people are rethinking budgets. Yeah, I was on a panel with Emily Mann, who just retired from the McCarter Theater last week. And she said people have to go back and they have to read Peter Brook's Empty Space and Jerzy Grotowski's but Towards a Poor Theater, because that's where we're all got to start now. Empty spaces, start with an empty space and build from there. What do you need to do a show? So I think there's going to be some reimagining as we see our budget shrinking a little bit, you know. I think it's a time of hope, though. I think it's a time of hope for theater insofar as we know people still want to work in theater. There'll always be actors and directors and people who want to do theater, people who want to tell their stories. And I think they're there. They're there. We just don't know how long it will be until it's fully alive again.
Well, you know, Oscar Hammerstein II wrote the lyric, "The theater is dying, the theater is dying, the theater is totally dead," which was a second act opener for his musical Me and Juliet with Richard Rodgers. But the fact of the matter is, every 20 to 30 years, there's that sense that it's over, that there's not much more to see, not much more to hear, but the theater revives. The theater consistently revives, grows greater, goes through its high points, begins to diminish. Somebody decides that it's probably over. How many more revivals can we do of Oklahoma?
Right.
But the theater has had an almost eternal life, as you pointed out, going back to ancient Egypt. And I think it will continue, especially with people who are foreseeing, who are open to change, like you, who are willing to take things on and make it available, make it possible. And I applaud you and all of your kin for that, because without the theater, quite frankly, I see life as being what is actually dying, not the theater itself, but life. The theater gives us so much hope and so much thought, so much content, things to retain, things to obtain, things to work with. So I applaud you for what you're doing this season. I wish more theaters were able to follow your lead.
You know, Peter, it would have been much easier had we just closed our doors.
Of course.
It really would have been. I mean, I would have been probably reading a lot of books now, seeing my grandchildren, you know, I mean, I would have been bored, but it would have been fine. But my staff would have been laid off. They would have been laid off probably till the end of the year, and we would have had to raise money with no staff. And Pittsfield would be all the sadder for it. And so I felt that I just couldn't let down Pittsfield, where I just had to try to find a way to make it work. And it's been difficult. It has not been easy. It may sound it, but it hasn't been every step of the way. But I think I've always, I've always welcomed challenges as long as I could think them through and make things as safe and as responsible as possible. So I'm just throwing my hat in and trying to make it happen. And you know what, if the pandemic comes back, guess what? We close. We're not dumb, you know? Sure. If it's worse in the fall, we don't do it, right? You know, we met with the doctors and they said, it's under control now. There were 2 cases in the hospital and they were long-term cases with underlying illnesses. Doesn't mean they're not new in cases here, but not serious cases. And they're, of the 41 cases in Pittsfield, of the 41 deaths, 28 were in that the home in Williamstown. The assisted living or something. So it's okay, but if it gets worse, we're going to take that under consideration. But just to sit and wait isn't something that I can do easily. I guess I'm a little impatient.
I think we're about ready to open this up to questions. So Megan or Nancy or Naomi, whoever's going to be handling that, I think we've gotten to that point.
Yep, wonderful. We have a variety of questions and comments. First, Louise says, wait, where did that go? So Lael Locke says, I remember seeing both Into the Woods and the Burnt Part Boys in the former car dealership on Route 7 in Great Barrington.
Oh my God, yes. Talk about making theaters wherever you can find a space.
Exactly. Kudos to Julianne for her vision, and hi to Peter with love for his good reviews.
Oh, great. Yay.
Thank you.
And I think Burnt Part Boys was performed in the library in Pittsburgh, right?
The basement of the library, that's where our stage 2 was for 2 years. We have been everywhere. If there's a space, we'll turn it into a theater. The lower the ceilings, the more difficult, of course.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable transformation in the library. And Louise Frankenberg has 2 comments. One was she's worried about Peter's book tower behind him.
I love that.
Thank you,
At this
Louise.
angle, it looks like it's tipping forward. But she also asked, and I know you had talked about it a bit before, how you handle restroom access. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
How I handle what?
Restroom access?
Yeah, well, I mean, there will be no intermissions. If one has to use the facilities, it's fine. We're going to have somebody outside the bathrooms making sure that it's not crowded in there. We have all touchless things, you know. People shouldn't have to touch anything. If you have to go if you need to use a facility during the show, there'll always be someone in the lobby guiding you.
Great. And Ben Lipson comments, when we open up, people will come from Boston or New York City or Florida with infections, and that's a worry.
You know, there's no more, you know, there was, when the governor first opened up, he said he didn't want people from different states. And now I think he moved it from, he urges it to recommending it. That's no longer, we have found that hasn't happened in the Berkshires. Jonathan Butler from One Berkshire told me that 20,000 New Yorkers came here from March. They're already here, folks. They're just not coming. From March to June 1st. And there has been no uptick on infections. Most New Yorkers are very aware of it. They come from New York. They wear the masks. If you go to the grocery store, you'll see them wearing masks. I think people have been really good here. I think that, and so what the hospital told me, what the doctors told me, as long as you wear your mask and are 6 feet away, 3 to 6 feet in the hospital, but 6 feet in social distances, if you wear your mask and you're sanitized and wash your hands all the time, you are fine. They have not had one case of COVID. None of the employees at Berkshire Medical Center, 1,000 employees, they have not had one case since March. But he said the masks are the thing. You take your over your nose. If you see people in the store, they wear their mask like this. I literally have to say to people, please put your mask up. Please put your mask up. I was in Walmart, and this guy, you know, who was working there, I said, you must put your mask over your nose. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, no, you really must. It's not effective unless you do. So I think it's more about making sure people have, rather than worrying, look, people are going to come here. You go to New York State to do something, you come back. Somebody you know works there. I think the important thing is to take care of yourself and to wear your mask, to sanitize, and to wash your hands all the time. And obviously not get in close groups.
Thank you. And Jesse Waldinger has a question. What's happening with your educational and community programs at this difficult time?
That's a really good question. We have canceled all of our Kids Act for the summer. We're not bringing, we don't know how we could do a camp with assisting kids are 6 feet apart. And even that, I mean, that wouldn't make sense, particularly with this new form of COVID or Kawasaki disease. We don't wish to, parents have asked us to do this, by the way. We've been overwhelmed with requests because people think, oh, you can do it in the theater. Why can't you do it in the camps? We can't take that on. So we're doing 2 virtual camps in August. You can go online and find out exactly when they are. As far as the Playwright Mentoring Project goes, our youth at risk programming, we moved that to Zoom by mid-March. And we had difficulty because some of those kids did not have, they either didn't have Wi-Fi, they don't have an iPad, they don't have a phone. And we're still raising money to get all of those kids out, because we think in the fall it's still going to be that. We're trying to make that whole thing Zoomable, and wherever they are, to make sure they have Wi-Fi and they have the right equipment. We did the plays that we do at the end of the 6-month program in April. We did them on Zoom. We then did highlights of them. The kids loved doing them. I mean, some of them had better facilities and ability, with the equipment than others, but it was still effective because they still got to talk. Some of their parents were essential workers. They were really, really concerned. It was great for them to be able to have an outlet. Many of them, actually, their parents were essential workers. I was surprised there were so many. And we're going to start that up again. We'll continue that in the fall. We're going to follow what the public schools do.
Right.
So if the public schools open, we will still probably be a little bit more insistent. We have large rehearsal rooms, so we will keep the kids far apart. But I don't see us doing any camps, and we'll wait till we see what the schools do.
Thank you. And then Naomi Spatz had a similar question about kids. Carol Fisher has a comment and question. Last season's play, Hold These Truths, about Japanese internment camps was outstanding. I agree. Could you tell us about your background in Japanese theater?
Oh my God. Well, when I was working on my PhD at City University of New York, I had to pick a topic, and my husband and I had just gone to Japan, and I had seen the Bunraku Puppet Theater, and I loved it. It was so exotic. It was so different. I mean, the culture just sort of, and this was like 1970 something, mid 70s. And it just sort of blew me away. And I got to know one of the professors, someone in the lobby we happened to talk to someone, and he was one of the foremost of theaters on the Bunraku Puppet Theater, the puppet theater that has 3/4 life-size puppets, and there's 3 Ningyo Shibai, 3 puppeteers behind them. And I think probably foolishly said, when they said, what do you want to do your dissertation on? You can't do it on Miller. You can't do it on Inge. You can't do it on, American playwrights. We have too many of those. We have too many of those dissertations. So I said, well, how about Japanese theater? How about Bunraku? They said, great. Well, then I had to go learn Japanese. It was a long, long haul. Actually, my husband and I both learned Japanese. He's still taking Japanese lessons. He gets very frustrated when he's studying, and I'll go by him and he'll say, what's that word? What's that word? And I'll be able to tell him. I'll go, because I haven't studied in years, although we still go back to Japan quite often. And so my background was that I got a doctorate in classical Japanese theater, specializing in the Bunraku Puppet Theater right after World War II, when so many plays in Japan were censored. When MacArthur came in, he censored the Japanese theater. And just very quickly, you really want to know about this, they censored the Japanese, they censored all of the plays that dealt with harakiri and all, blind allegiance to the emperor, the tenno, and so forth. So what MacArthur unknowingly did, or not enough MacArthur or his assistants did, they let go the people who were in the prison during World War II. And they were communists. Many of them were communists. And the communists infiltrated Bunraku and Kabuki. And it was a really interesting time. And so they were trying to get their one for all and all for one in this Bunraku, which was very, very like, you had to study 20 years to be a main puppeteer and 20 years for this. And it just put it in total disarray. And it didn't come back together until 1963. That's the period of my dissertation, from 1945 to 1963. I'm really a theater historian who just specialized in Japanese theater. So I love it. We go back when we can. My husband was supposed to go back in August just to live there for a month. He loves it so much while I was working. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen now. So I still have a great, and I always was interested in Japanese internment camps and thought that they were never really fully, I think people in the West, in California and so forth, are so much more aware of them, but people on the East Coast are not. And so I know the playwright Jeannie Sakato, the woman who wrote Hold These Truths, and I was so happy to be able to do it, and really thrilled with the reception, because that actor, Joel de la Fuente, was amazing. And he brought to life, and he brought an understanding of that period through Jeannie's play. I love doing plays where I'm introducing the audiences to new worlds, like The Chinese Lady, the first female Chinese immigrant, or American version 2.1, how Blacks feel that history has been written wrong, has not been written correctly. I mean, I just want people to think about these things Because I think that's one of the reasons we go to theater, to be entertained, but also to leave with more knowledge than when we came in, if we can.
Thank you. We have a comment from Jeannie Woods. She says, "Hi, Julianne. Just a comment. I am so glad to hear you talk with such courage and hope. I saw your production of American Underground last October and was amazed. It really moved me and was one of the best theater I have seen in years. Such an important play and wonderfully realized on your stage. Thank you."
I love that play. That play was part of, we got that play because we have what's called the Bergman Play Festival, the Bergman Play Contest, rather. And so someone on our board, Bonnie and Terry Bergman, gave us money to find the young new playwrights, because we found that so many theaters were commissioning all of these playwrights that where were the younger ones, the ones who were in mid-career? As soon as they had a hit, they got commissioned and they weren't available. So could we find the young playwrights? So both Stacey Rose, who wrote American Version 2.1, and Brent Ascari, who's a Persian-American playwright who wrote American Underground, we found those plays and we never would have gotten them. We never would have found them without this big search. We're now in our second Bergman contest. We do it every other year because we get in between 450 and 500 plays we have to read. We have a large group of readers. And we just got, so it just closed in April. We have 478 plays we're reading. And by December, we'll have 3 new plays that will win, one $25,000 award and 2 $5,000 awards. And we're hoping to be able to do probably one of them in that same slot, in that fall slot. I wanted to try to do really meaningful theater in the fall. I didn't want to do just like, oh, here's something for the fall, you know. And we also often do student, you know, we always do student matinees. And we won't be doing any this year, by the way, even though we're doing Arthur Miller's The Price. It would be wonderful for it. But the American Underground, which is basically about Muslims and the, you know, the prejudice against Muslims in this country, in a much more serious way. I won't go into it. But anyhow, it was a great play for high school kids to see.
Absolutely. And thank you for elevating new voices. That's so important.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Barbara Waldinger. Are you thinking of doing play readings on Zoom?
We may do one or two. If we can do new plays, because again, actors want to work, and I'm not big on Zoom readings if it's a big cast, but we may do a couple, might do a couple. We just have to see how the season works out, but it's a possibility. Actually, we're looking at a couple plays right now that we might do reading.
Great. And Ben Lipson asks, what are your favorite plays about dealing with a plague?
What are my favorite plays dealing with the plague?
I'm sure there'll be a lot of new ones coming out soon.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to do any plays. I mean, I lived through it. I'm not sure if I'd be ready to do the play. What exists now? I mean, I don't know. I don't think I have any favorite plays that deal with the plague. And I would, if it's a play that deals with a plague, I mean, I remember, is it Peter, Red Noses? Howard Brenton's play, Red Noses, does that deal with the plague?
It might. I'm not very familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple that I remember reading. And that play had a really large cast. So, you know, right now we've got to think of things that are a little smaller too. I don't have any favorite plays. Right now, I'm trying to do a season of like hope and joy. Because I think that's where, if we go out, we go to the theater, like Harry Clark is this, it's fun. It's about a con man. It's about a con man who succeeds, a charismatic con man. We always love those kinds of things. Cabarets are, of course, always, you know, fun. 10 by 10 is funny. The Price is not. I figured by the fall, we could sort of, you know, dig into an Arthur Miller play.
And there's a question for Peter. Since you have no theater performances to review right now, what are you writing and critiquing?
What am I writing? I'm still trying to get this season on. Oh, you mean to Peter? Oh, good.
Peter, sorry.
My turn. Well, I've been using the website BerkshireBrightFocus.com to keep readers abreast of what's going on with the theaters. A lot of theaters are doing online programming, and I've been trying to post as much of it as I possibly can. I just finished writing a new play, my first political play. I'm very excited about that. It's taking on a whole bunch of other things. not plagues, but certainly traumatic times. And I'm, at the request of a good friend, working on a memoir, which is the hardest thing I've ever done. I can talk about my life endlessly, but putting it down in a format that's interesting to read is a whole new world for me. So that's basically what I've been working on.
Interesting.
Great. We look forward to reading it. Back to Julie. Naomi Spatz asks, are you training a coterie of directors and artistic directors? Or any ideas how to do that?
I think that's so important to do. I mean, I had a meeting with SDC. I'm on the advisory council there. And one of our big things is like, what's happening with all these young people who just graduated from maybe graduate school with directing degrees? Where are they going? They're not going to be working for the next year or two, you know? And how can we help them? How can we mentor them? And they're coming up with some ways that we can meet them and talk to them and make suggestions of things for them to read and then discuss them. I am trying to, I always have an assistant. Of my assistants in these 25 years, 7 of them have started theaters. 7 of them have started their own theaters.
Wow.
I love, which
Fantastic.
I think is very exciting, that they're still in the business after working here and that they love it and they start it. And I hear from almost every single one of them. I just keep in touch with them because you never stop mentoring. You just don't. You know, it's like children. Do you ever stop mothering? You don't. I think the more has to be done. We're going to have to do a lot more to mentor directors, particularly artistic directors. You can't become an artistic director. All of a sudden you're a director and you go, oh, artistic director. Well, if you don't know budgeting, you don't know marketing, you don't know development, it's kind of hard. I mean, it isn't, I think I got a lot of experience from SDC because it's the first place I had to read a budget. I never had to read a budget before, and I had to understand the budget and the lines and all of that. And I think that helped me a lot. I would love our union, SDC, to offer a course to young directors who want to be artistic directors. They offer courses in New York, people who want to become producers, like commercial producers. And I think a course on how to become an artistic director, or just helping people realize that they may have those skills and they don't even know they have them. It's important. It's in the early stages, though, and I think it's something we have to do.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Nancy Vale mentions, what about Angels in America? Angels is a play.
So to speak, yeah. That is a large play, a very large, but if you do parts 1 and part 2, to say the least, it's such a large play. See, right now, I mean, I love it. If it's a question is, do I love it? Yes, I love Angels in America. I don't think that we would be able to do it now, but obviously it's one of the best.
And from Barbara Waldinger, I love the kabuki actor on your wall. Do you think traditional Japanese theater has something to offer young playwrights, actors, and directors today?
Okay, so that is actually a puppet. That's actually, I don't know if I can bring this up to it. Or how am I doing it? This way? No, I don't know how to do it. Oh, no, I ruined it. I can't. There, you can see it a little bit there. You see, that's actually a bunraku puppet, and that's actually bunraku as well. Do I think that, now how do I get back here to a gallery view? I got it, okay. Do I think that the traditional Japanese theater, well, you know, maybe not directly, but indirectly, insofar as I think the Japanese aesthetic is kind of fabulous. You know, it's just, you see colors on the stage you've never seen before. It's just, and sometimes it's done very simply, sometimes it's not. But I don't know now. I think if the theater had I think we're going through budget crisis, all of us, and I think it's going to be more difficult because a lot of Japanese theater things are not so simple. I don't think the No Theater is. I to this day cannot still get into No Theater. When I go, I have to be really awake and have 2 cups of coffee before I go. I've never been able to personally identify with that aesthetic. I love kabuki and I also love bunraku, but I'm not sure that aesthetic is going to be really meaningful in the theater now. It is to me personally, but I don't know to other people who don't really know it. Yeah.
Thank you. And from Carol Fisher, any chance of you're ever doing It Can't Happen Here? a dramatic adaptation of Sinclair Lewis's political novel.
Do you know, that's so interesting that you asked that. I just recently bought that book and I've never read it, and I bought it and someone suggested it to me. I'm going to have time to read it probably, in June. I think because June is our the mid-June to mid-July is our bit of a downtime. I am going to, that's a really interesting idea, and I just have to read it. And I'll let you know.
Great. And a comment from Barbara Gold. I admire your courage to open the theater, but I am still wary about sitting in a theater. I have been a supporter since Barrington Stage's inception and truly miss live theater.
I think that some people feel that way, and I think really, quite honestly, you shouldn't go. If you're really nervous about it, don't go, because you'll be uncomfortable. And sitting there being uncomfortable, you won't enjoy it. So we'll try to do as much as possible to make people feel comfortable. But you may want to wait till next year. We're just trying to do it for those people who feel that they're comfortable going. It's only 160. It's like a glorified stage 2, really. Don't think of it as a main stage.
An spacious stage 2.
A spacious stage 2.
Let's see, Naomi Spatz asks Julie, what about you doing a memoir?
Do you know what I've done? By the way, I just want to thank the last person for their support. Thank you. So it's okay if you uncomfortable this year. It's really okay. Just come back when you're comfortable. After the third year of Barrington Stage, Marianne Quinson, my board president at the time, said, you should really keep a diary, or almost like not a memoir, but a diary of everything that's happened, because you won't remember it. And I said, Minky is what I call it. Minky, yeah, of course I'll remember it. What do you mean I won't? Okay, I'll do it. So I started taking notes. By the 5th year, when people asked me something about the first or second year, I couldn't remember. And I was so happy I had it written down, because you can only keep so many numbers in your head. I mean, it's just so much information. And the more actors that work there, the more designers. I now have about 100 pages. And I haven't written up this year yet. I don't know where to begin. Oh my God. I usually write it up at the end of the season. I usually go away for a week or so in November, and I write most of it, and I just keep on writing it to the end of the year. Yeah, it's of interest. Maybe when I retire, I'll think about it. I think the history of the theater might be interesting to other people who want to start a theater.
Yes.
That would be it more than anything. That would be the reason, not my personal life, but the ups and downs, and how you just have to keep on going, or find another way to accomplish what you thought you knew the answer and you didn't. Joe.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, Joe Papp has this great quote, and I use it all the time in the office. They're so tired of it. And if things don't change, they don't stay the same. They go backwards. In other words, if they're not changing, you think like that they don't stay the same. They're going backwards. And so what we're always having to do is not think about this is the way we did it, but how's it work and how do we move forward and do it a little differently. We generally find we can do something for about 2 years, and then it becomes old. First year is like, great idea. Second, okay, it worked. And then it's like, we got to move on.
Well, I think what you just said is very important for you to write something, because it's a lesson for those who are coming up. I won't be around to see them, but I'd like to know that they have you as an asset. And what you've been saying now and your experiences have been so extraordinary, and we don't know about it. We as the theater supporters, but you as a theater producer, I think it's a very important lesson and help to so many people.
Then I'm just going to start writing then. Okay, Naomi, I'm going to.
No. You cannot give up producing and directing, but
Well, I think it would probably be good to just, sometimes when you write things down that happened a year ago, you put them in perspective. I often find that I can't write about the season when I'm in the middle of it. People say, write that down. I go, no, I have to wait till like November till I look at what happened, and you have a little bit more perspective on it, Yeah, okay. Maybe it'll be 120, maybe it'll be 130 pages by the end of this year. Oh my God.
So we have one more question for Peter, and that is any plans of what to do about the Berkeys, which is the Berkshire Theater Awards, for the future?
We've been discussing it. The board has been meeting and talking about it. We haven't come to a final decision for this year. There have been some interesting alternative suggestions. Without a lot of theaters actually producing and presenting work, there's very little competition. And without the competition, it doesn't seem entirely fair to give out theater awards this year.
Yeah.
We have some thoughts. We may do some special things, but we're not certainly giving up on this project. We'll be back next year, God willing, theater happening just about everywhere. But it's one of the reasons we wrote the commentary that was published in the Eagle and Berkshire Edge, and hopefully a few other places that I'm not aware of. We think it's important that people constantly stay aware of the fact that theater is both entertainment and education, as well as an economic driver for this region, for the whole region, not just for the Berkshires. It's important to keep in mind that creativity is really what is at the basis of all life. Creativity of a person through their parents, the efforts to create a child, the efforts to educate a child, and what follows. We as adults get an interesting opportunity to experience things through theater and film and television that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. And as we lose different aspects of that, we lose a broader sense of the world. One of my great experiences actually with Julie was back in Sheffield when she did a play about Japanese war wives. It was an extraordinary play. And it got me very connected with Barrington Stage because Julie or her press person, or maybe the combination, blew up my review and put it out in front of the theater. It was the second time in my life that had happened. It was very exciting to see. It also made people very aware of the fact that theater doesn't exist all by itself. The critics play a role, the audience plays a major role, and the combination of all three is what keeps it active, alive, vibrant, and enthralling. Enthralling in the sense that it gives us another view of life. So I've always been very grateful for that, Julie.
I love what you said. You should write the book. You should write a book on that. I mean, that's so fabulous what you're saying, because that's so true. I mean, that's everything that I believe in. I mean, maybe that's why we get along so well. I mean, that's exactly it. Yeah, it just gives us another view of life that's bigger than ourselves. Yeah, it's great.
Very true.
Yeah.
And if we didn't fully appreciate it, we know how dull it is to watch something all the time on Zoom or television or on the screen. Lots of groups are offering things, and I find I get turned off after a while because we lose the vitality of the stage. It just doesn't transfer with that same energy, and maybe that's why we're feeling dull.
Well, I think
Accepted. I think it's been a wonderful conversation, and we're so grateful to have Julie Boyd and Peter Bergman here today. And there were actually two, and you've already addressed in some ways, there were two final comments. One was a suggestion from Louise Frankenberg. You could do paid readings on Zoom, as the BSO plans to do with master classes. And Ben Lipson wrote, any comment about watching plays online instead of being in the theater, which has been discussed last night. He says he watched Spike Lee's movie about an audience watching the play Passover.
Right. I think if we do a Zoom reading, we're planning on doing a Zoom reading and donating it to the NAACP Scholarship Fund. That's what our next thing is. I think that you can ask actors to do a reading. This is what the equity rules are. If it's a benefit, it could benefit Barrington Stage, but right now, I think it's important to donate and care and show that you care. And that's our next thing that we're looking for, the right play to be able to do that. So,
could I just do one thing, and before we leave, I just feel very strongly about the fact that our last session and this session, have been wonderful in the sense of it's very different from going to the theater, but we are learning, all of us, about the people who help make our theater for us and create and write about the theater and all the things that theater involves with the economy. These are things that you read in a program note. You don't get this feeling, that feeling that I am getting now in our being face-to-face discussing with you. And I'd like to thank you both for sharing so much of yourselves and your views and your thoughts. And I think it enables us to appreciate your work that much more. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both. Both of you have always been so responsive to come before the OLLI classes, and we do appreciate it. We do have one next Friday. It'll be Barbara Waldinger, who will be interviewing Kate McGuire from Berkshire Theater Festival, and we look forward to that. And we look forward to seeing your plays again, Miss Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, everyone. You're wonderful.
Peter, on your
We
mem-
have
Thank
another
you.
comment in chat. Monda Driscoll writes, thank you for another hopeful message regarding performing arts in the Berkshires. And here, Nancy from Louise Frankenberg.
Thank you, Louise.
We're very thankful to Nancy Vale and Naomi Spatz for organizing this enlightening and entertaining and educational series of conversations.
And Megan, we're thankful for you, what you've done. And Andy, who's behind that wonderful head, who's our technical genius. And
Thank you all. Thanks.
Okay, take care.
Thank you, everyone.
See.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
you on stage.